Awesome. Lori, it's so great to see you. And thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today about your journey as an entrepreneur. I am wearing your jewelry right now, which I love. And as a digital nomad, like I literally only have two necklaces with me and they are both yours. And people ask about them all the time. And I tell them about you all the time. So I don't even know how many people around the world have checked out your jewelry and bought it, hopefully because of me recommending it. But I'm so excited to chat with you today. And why don't you start by taking a moment to just introduce yourself, tell us what you do.
Yeah, of course. I'm always happy to chat with you, Tasha. And also, I feel like I need to put you on my payroll as like global brand ambassador. So,
I would love that.
um, thanks for I love always seeing you pop up in my feed wearing my necklaces. Like I always do notice that, and I, as a jewelry designer, definitely will like zoom in on a photo and be like, oh yeah, she's wearing my necklace, yay! So. Yeah, happy to chat with you today. My name is Lori Sainhoke, and I am a 3D jewelry designer. I started my brand, Love Lori Michelle Jewelry, many years ago, and like a lot of small business owners, it was kind of a hobby turned into craft, turned into full-time job, which is a sort of long story. There were other diversions along the way. I was working in architecture before this, but for about 10 years was in the architecture field and owned my own small business there before sort of making the transition into making jewelry. And yeah, it's been a lot of trial and error and a lot of learning as I go, but I'm feeling good about where I am now. And I'm happy because my heart has always been in designing and being able to create things for myself. And in architecture, I was implementing a lot of other people's designs. And so now I feel like I'm in a place where my heart is in the work that I'm doing. So I'm glad to be doing full-time jewelry now.
That's amazing. And that is absolutely the best place to be. Because I remember when we first started working together, you were so like, this was just a hobby. You really wanted it to be a full-time thing. So congratulations. That's so amazing that you've been able to achieve that. And let's talk a little bit about that journey. Tell me a little bit about where you were in your business when we first started working together. If you can think back to that time and what made you want to work with me. Do you remember?
Yeah, so I think at the time we met, we were neighbors, and I found out more about what you were doing. And yeah, like I said at the time, I would say I was focusing like 95% on the architecture work that I was doing, and 5% was free time when I could find it, was making jewelry. And I think when I spoke to you first, I always mentioned the jewelry was like a back burner thing, and I'm just kind of dabbling and doing this, and I'm not really sure how to make money with it. And at the time, I think the challenge for me was just trying to figure out how to transition from selling a service, which is essentially what I was doing through architecture. I was, providing clients with 3D renderings and imagery. So it was essentially just creating digital assets, right, that I would create and then sell. And so I was pricing my product really hourly at that point and selling a service. And then with jewelry, it's like really a whole new animal for me because it's obviously a very product driven business. I'm not selling myself at an hourly rate. It's really, I've created this product and now I have to price it and hope that people buy it. And so really what I was creating and the way I was selling it was, totally different from where I started. So in working with you, it was really, figuring out how to transition between those two, but also figuring out how to reallocate my time so that I could be spending, more than the 5% of my free time when I could find it on creating jewelry.
100%. And it's been so amazing to see you make that transition. So tell us a little bit about how far you've come. Like, where are you at today in the business? You said now you're working on the jewelry full time. That's so exciting. What growth and changes have you seen? Have you achieved?
Yeah, I started to, and I should have pulled up actual numbers before this call because I know I love when I listen to something and people are like, well,
Yeah.
there's been a lot of growth. And So I will say I did not pull up actual numbers, but I've seen a huge growth over the last several years. I definitely was doing this more as, like I mentioned, a hobby, and I would make things kind of here and there for friends and family. And I think my website was really like brand new when I started, talking to you. So there were a lot of, I think there were a lot of hiccups there in terms of like getting people not only online, but to buy a product from me there on the website. So over the last couple of years, I've really solidified, how a user interacts with my website and is able to purchase from me. I've also started doing a lot more in-person markets and pop-ups and events, and am also selling now through a lot of local boutiques, both here on the West Coast, and I'm still shipping product back to a lot of boutiques on the East Coast. So I would say the big difference is that when I started, it was like a friend or a family member would be like, hey, or even like you at that point were like, hey, can I buy a necklace? Oh yeah, sure. I'm like, can you Venmo me? And I didn't really have like a formal way of selling things. And now I've focused really on, I always call it like a three-pronged kind of thing. Like I've got my website, so online sales. I've got my events that I do, so pop-ups and markets. And then it's really wholesale, so selling my product to boutiques or shops that then sell my products for me. So I've really went from like casual, whatever, not knowing what I'm doing, to like focusing on these three avenues to sell pieces.
That's amazing. That's such a huge transformation to go from just selling to friends and family and people that know you to now you have like a real legitimate business. You're selling to actual boutiques. You're going to like these amazing events. And the fact that strangers are buying from you on your website on the internet is pretty freaking cool, you know? Like I remember when no one had bought any of your pieces that didn't know you personally, and now you've got total strangers who are so excited to buy your pieces. I do have some of the numbers. I know that from our time together, you were able to quadruple your sales. And then I think the year after that, you tripled them again, just the online sales. So that's like really cool. And I know during our time together, it was so cool to see you like exhibit at the Smithsonian Maker Fair, start being at all those local stockists, like Made in DC. Like I saw you then later showing up at the Tacoma Street Festival, which we had talked about. Like just seeing the growth in your business and seeing you at all these cool places has been so amazing. And then now that you've moved to California, and I've seen like right away, like I'm seeing you on Instagram, like already popping up at all these cool places, like so amazing. Just off the top of your head, I know you said you didn't have any numbers, but is there any other sort of like tangible growth you feel like you've seen in the business and results, like perhaps in terms of sales or growing your email list, or the kind number of events you're doing, like that kind of stuff? Anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, actually, and I should have known that you would have had numbers ready because you're good like that. Which is one of the things I learned from you is like how to track things like that. I do know that, let's see, so last year, I know I sold over 700 pieces through my
Wow.
website alone. And I know that because I have started a practice of donating $1 from every one of my sales to a local organization that's doing good in the community.
That's amazing.
I have not looked at my numbers from this year, but I know that I'm on track to beat that. I can't say whether I'm ever going to quadruple sales again, but I hope that one year I do. And so I know to some small businesses, like 700 might seem like either a really small number or a really large number, depending on what kind of product you're selling or, what you're selling really. But for me, when I look at that, that's almost 2 pieces of jewelry a day. So that's a lot for me.
That's amazing. That's
And
amazing.
as the person who makes and ships everything, that's pretty huge for me. And then some of those numbers were through pandemic years, which were actually really good for online sales. And then, coming out of that in these last couple of years, tracking things has been different for a lot of online retailers. So while my numbers are definitely on track to beat that for the last year, I'm also now wholesaling. So I'm kind of splitting some of the time that I was previously doing, something else. I'm now doing that. But I would say this is I kind of loosely define when I started, but this is either my 5th or 6th year, like fully in business. So it's nice when you get to that point that I actually have data that I can track,
Yeah.
which is something that you set me up doing. And yeah, having those numbers to compare and say, okay, I did this amount in this year and this amount this year. Once you get a couple years of data, that's when you can really start to look at it and say, oh, hey, like I am increasing this, or, I would like to be increasing this more, and how can I track it and how can I achieve those results? Yeah, and then you throw in a few weird years of pandemic life and you've got all sorts of data points to look at and try and figure out, what the world is doing.
100%. And like, I was just thinking about, like, I remember you saying you wanted to make bracelets and now you're making bracelets. And like, I remember back, like, before we had your launch party, you were like scared to do that. And then you did that and like got awesome results with it. And like, you didn't have an email list before. And now that's something that you have. Like, just seeing the growth and formalization and like thinking back to a few years ago to now, like, really incredible. What does it feel like to have your business be where it is today, to look back and realize like this was just a hobby before, now it's like a real business? What have you been able to like do or buy, or maybe have that time and that flexibility as a business owner that like Lori from 10 years ago would look at and just be so proud of you and so impressed by?
Thanks. Yeah. It's nice to look back at where I was and see where I am now, but also use that as another benchmark, into the future. Like I look at where I've been and where I am now, and I feel really good about a lot of the changes and things that I've implemented, maybe even just behind the scenes. But yeah, adding a new category of jewelry was big for me because it takes time to sit down and do things like that. And a lot of times, especially as a designer and somebody who's doing a lot of the behind the scenes stuff in the small business, it's easy to get lost down a certain path and not make time. And anyways, I feel good about, yeah, how far I've come, but also, to be able to set benchmarks into the future and to figure out ways to grow. I think, as a hobbyist or just getting started in small business, there's just so many ways you can spend your time pursuing different things, whether it is building up a website or, whether it is trying to meet clients or meet people in person and just get, create brand awareness, I guess. And, there's 100 other ways you can spend your time sort of focused on different tasks. And I feel like one of the things I've learned as I've grown as a small business owner is like where to spend that time and what channels are working for me and what ones aren't, and frankly which ones I like and enjoy.
Yeah.
I've had many years of doing these in-person markets and showing up, and then you go to a few that are duds, or like the wind blows all your jewelry off of a thing, and everything's a learning moment.
Oof.
And figuring out where to focus time and energy. But I know you asked in your last question and mentioned the mailing list, and that is one of the things that I finally had to like pay into the next category of mailing, because I've grown it so big that they want,
That's amazing.
want you to pay more per month, which is a good thing as a business owner, because those are, again, just more figures you can track and say, okay, like I know when I send out a mailing list, now I expect X amount of revenue. Like in the
Yep.
beginning, it was like $60, and it was like my mother-in-law buying something, which was
Yeah.
awesome. But now I send it out, and I expect anywhere from like 500 to 1,000 in revenue, which, again, like I kind of hesitate or hate to throw out numbers, because I know for some people that's like peanuts, and for other people, like, oh my God, I hope, I hope to get
Yeah.
there. So, I share that not as a, like a, I don't know. Um,
You mentioned like you've learned so many lessons over the last few years. Is there anything you want to share with entrepreneurs who are watching, who maybe they're feeling like, oh, that's such a high number, like I wish I could get that? Like what do you want them to know?
yeah, I think the biggest lesson that I've learned is, I don't know, just I think like being your authentic self. Like I feel like sometimes I've gone down paths creating something that like I think people want, but it doesn't resonate with me. I'm struggling to think of like a specific example, but I don't know. I just, you get that icky feeling when you're like, I'm doing this because I feel like I should, but it's
Yeah,
not me. And,
totally.
you come off feeling like inauthentic. And I think people can sense that in you. And for a lot of small businesses, you know, they say people are buying your product, but they're also buying a version of you.
Yeah.
People want something because they like your story and they like your product and they like, what you're putting out into the world. So I think people follow you or buy your products for a reason. And then if all of a sudden you're just doing something that feels like it's not you, people can sense that. And I think I've seen that reflected sometimes in the past in sales numbers or
Yeah.
things that just don't work.
100%.
But that said, I think as long as you're being authentic to yourself, it is good to, I'm not saying don't try new things or try new avenues or, it's good to put yourself outside of your comfort zone. But I think as artists or as a maker or a small business owner, like, when you're, oh, this isn't me. I'm
Yeah.
trying to take some fad or something and it's not working. So yeah,
That's
just
a
be
really
yourself.
good one.
Be yourself is my advice.
A classic, a golden
Yes,
rule.
a
Um,
classic but an important one.
I remember one of the big things we talked about was this idea of overnight success. And I remember you saying to me, oh, I just look around on Instagram. It just like seems like all these people, they're like an overnight success. And like, why am I not there yet? Like, why am I not getting those results yet? And I remember what I told you was like, listen, a lot of these people, it looks like they're an overnight success, but they've been working towards this goal for 5 years or 10 years or a really long time. And it just looks like they've become an overnight success. How do you feel about this concept now? Like how have you seen maybe from our time working together and from your growth as an entrepreneur now, what are maybe some of the non-tangible growth you've seen in yourself? Like, are you feeling more confident? Like, how do you deal with those feelings?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I definitely had those feelings when I started out. And yeah, no, like nobody is doing things overnight. And anybody that looks like they are is lying. And like personas online are very easy to get swept up in like, oh, they're doing so much more than me or they're making this and that. And yeah. In fact, I have one post-it note on my wall. Can we read this or no? It's too
Wait,
dark.
slow, steady growth. Yes,
Slow,
I
steady
love
growth. Okay,
that.
so this is up next to my computer. It's the only thing on my wall over here.
Ah,
Because yeah, I look at that every day and remind myself that like little changes lead to bigger growth. And it does
yeah,
not happen overnight and it doesn't even happen in 3 months or 6 months. Like it's yearly progress, yearly tracking. Some of the most successful small business owners that I know now and have networked with and have gotten to know have been at it for 5, 7, 10 years. And I
yeah.
think that, if there was like some easy overnight thing, like people would just do that and we would all do it. And I would sign up tomorrow and do it. But yeah, growing an audience and growing, followers or however you want to call it, it takes time. And,
Yeah,
I honestly, some of like my sales numbers that I've noticed increasing are from repeat customers. And I'm
yeah,
finally at a point where like, I can point to a small handful of people that constantly buy from me and
yeah,
not family members and friends, which are great, but, people that really have found my products and pieces and my designs resonate with them. And, it's that is rewarding to me to
yes,
find like I found my niche, I found my
yes,
people, and to be able to grow even that small portion of I'll call it like devotees. We all have like, whether it's a small brand or a large brand, like if it comes out with something, you're gonna buy it or you're into it or you're interested in it. So growing that has, that sort of fan base has been really nice and not something that I thought about at all in the beginning, but realizing that like my pieces aren't for everyone. Like even my mom said the other day, she's like, oh, I love this and I love that, but your stuff is too modern. Like it's just not her taste.
Yeah.
Like, thanks, mom. But I think that realizing that your product or your piece isn't everyone's cup of tea, but focusing on the ones that it is. And so when, I have one of those customers, I say, oh, like they bought 7 pieces from you. This, I'm going to make damn sure that everything I send them is like spot on, and
Yeah.
I'm going to forward to them, and they're going to get upgraded shipping, and just little stuff like that
Yeah.
that I've sort of learned as I go.
I love that. I mean, a lot of people look at that and see a negative. My pieces aren't for everyone. I look at that and see a positive. There is a specific audience that loves my jewelry, and those are the people that I am going to be selling to. And that is true for any business, no matter what product or service that you're selling. There is a perfect match audience out there for you. And it's just a question of finding them, meeting them where they are, and like giving them the information they need to decide to buy from you. Um,
Exactly.
I love that. So, do you remember what was it like working with me? Would you recommend it?
I do. Yeah. I would recommend you to anyone in a heartbeat. I think I was thinking about this a little bit before the call, but I think the biggest benefit that I found personally working with you is just accountability. Um, you were able to like during those months where I would kind of like get lost on some tangent or be chasing down some lead that maybe wasn't the thing I should have been doing. I don't know that you were necessarily telling me like specifically you need to do this, you need to do that, but more just being there as like my accountability partner to say, hey, did you do these things that we talked about last month? And I say, oh yeah, I have to do this for Tasha. And it for me it was like you know, you're not there to hold my hand and do the thing for me, but you're guiding me to like push me to do what I need to do to make my business successful. And I think that it like, I was kind of saying this a little bit earlier, but there's so many ways you can spend your time as a small business owner. And it's sometimes for me hard to focus on, even a handful of things, but you helped me set up project trackers and, all sorts of systems. I will say that like, I'm not a systematic person. I'm a creative person. So for me, it's like, you're helping me narrow my focus onto the couple things that I can do, both short term and long term. I still reference that project tracker where it's like, what can you do in a span of 1 month that's actually achievable? And then there were, bigger picture things that we talked through that were like, what can you be doing in a year from now?
Yeah.
And, some of the things that we wrote down, I'm still working on, and those got pushed to the 5-year plan, and that's fine. But yeah, just I think having the
And some of the things
accountability.
that you wrote down, you've done now.
Yeah, exactly. And at the time they were like 6 months to a year, and now I look back,
At
I'm
the
like, yeah,
time, it was like, it would be crazy for me to do this. And now, check, you've done it.
yeah, exactly. So I think you were a good balance to my tendency to get off track. I think you're really good at yeah, holding people accountable, hold my feet to the fire and say, hey, we're meeting in a month. What are you gonna do between now and then? What are you gonna get done? So I liked that a lot about working with you.
Well, thank you so much, Lori. Like I said, it was just such an absolute joy to work with you. You're like one of my favorite clients I've ever worked with, and just such a lovely human being. Like, not only do I love your jewelry and genuinely like wear it every single day of my life, I just love
Oh,
you as a human being and a
thank
person.
you. That's so
And it's
kind.
been so amazing to see your growth over the last few years. Thank you so much for taking the time to share all of this with me today. Is there
Yeah, no
anything
problem.
else you want to add? Is there any advice you want to give your younger entrepreneur self?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I would say just yeah, just keep going for it. You can't give
Yes,
up on yourself. Yeah.
love that. And I
And
love
give
that
yourself years,
sticky.
years of time to figure stuff out.
Yes, I love that. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today to chat. It was such a pleasure.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Thanks for chatting with me.